I'm Aryeh Schwartz, here with my co-hosts Rachel Galligan and Gabe Ibrahim, and welcome to the Winsidr show, where it's all about the W. This is an emergency podcast. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. The CBA has finally been agreed upon, and now it's time for the Winsidr show to discuss. As the youngest member of our crew of the show, I'm going to let Gabe go first with your initial reactions and thoughts of the new CBA.
Well, I think it's amazing that we have a CBA. I mean, we were all freaking out, I think, earlier in the week because tomorrow is the first day that teams can start talking to free agents. So I think everyone was getting a little antsy about whether or not there's going to be a new CBA. So just to have one is great, just so we know what we're working with, just so we know, what the compensation is and all this other jazz. And, I think it allows us to move forward in the season. As far as the deal itself, I think when it first was announced, I woke up and I'm sick. So I woke up and I was like, I'm not going to work. And then I looked at my phone and there was a tweet from Good Morning America that Chinea Gumake and Kathy Engelbert are going to be on the show. So it became very clear that the new CBA is getting announced today. So I'm fighting through the sickness to hopefully bring you guys some news, because it's just such a big deal. And I think what we found out was that the WNBA is betting on women. They are betting on this league. They are investing in this league. The entire point of the CBA is to invest in the league and have the players also invest in this league, because I think one of the things that was a problem that the WNBA PA brought up and WNBA brought up was that players aren't necessarily invested in this league. They have to go overseas. They have to go do they have to have off-season jobs just to make really ends meet, not even, to make a lot of money, just to make enough money to have a comfortable living and the kind of living that you would want as a professional basketball player. This CBA shows that the league understands that and is going to start compensating these players as professional athletes. There's going to be a 53% increase in the total cash compensation, which consists of base salary, additional performance bonuses. There's a prize pool for the Commissioner's Cup. There's going to be league and marketing deals. So basically what it all turns out to is the league's top players are going to be able to make over $500,000. Top players are going to be making, between $200,000 and $300,000. And the biggest part, because we're not just looking at the top players, we're trying to bring everyone, trying to make every player be able to have a good living playing in WNBA. The average salary is going to go up to $130,000 over this CBA, which is just massive. $130,000, it's nothing compared to what other players make. That's a good chunk of change, and you can make a really good life with that money. And so just this CBA seemingly is guaranteeing life-changing money to these players. And I just think it's such a huge deal. The other big news is that they're going to try to go for a 50-50 revenue sharing beginning next season, with the players getting 50%, owners getting 50%. That's better than some other leagues had it before, and certainly better than WNBA had it. Dave Barry had reported that it was between 20 and 30% before. So now it's going to be much more equal between the owners and the league. So there's a lot of positives here. They tried to fix some of the travel issues. They did a great job with childcare and family care, and having progressive policies in those areas. And as far as what we're concerned about as fans, free agency is going to be more open. Players are going to be able to move more. The core designations are going to be diminished substantially starting this year and then going into next year. By 2022, you're only going to be able to core someone twice. So as far as for us fans, I think the two biggest things are that we're going to have more free agency. We're going to have this Commissioner's Cup, which I'm very excited about. I mean, I watch European soccer, so you get a bunch of, little cups that mean stuff to people. So I think it's great. I think, there's some negatives that we can get into in a little bit, but my overwhelming response is just positive and hopeful. And I think we have to, at this point, I think we all have concerns about, all right, they're not guaranteeing a lot of much more base salary. The maximum base compensation is going to be $250,000, which is great, but that's not that much more than what players are making before. But there's going to be cash compensation, and Commissioner Engelbert on the conference call today said, we are guaranteeing that there's going to be a larger pool of money for players. And that to me is beautiful. I think it's going to be, it just shows that there's a commitment to women's professional basketball in this country, a commitment to betting on women, a commitment to this league that we all love. So today is just a huge win for WNBA fans.
Yeah, I'm here with you, Rachel. I know you're on the West Coast, so obviously you've had the least time to prepare for this with all the news coming in. So no worries if you're not going to list all these key details like Gabe did, because as Gabe mentioned, he was up 6, so he obviously had a jump start on all this. But give me your initial thoughts on this. What are you feeling these days?
Yeah, I mean, following this as closely as we have for so long, and obviously the couple of extensions that had been into place, I've really had my finger on that pulse quite a bit. So, understanding there was about a day and a half left before this was announced, I think we all knew it was coming out. And honestly, I mean, this is just a huge day. I mean, this is an incredible day. I think this is a day that we're going to look back on years from now, and really celebrate, because this is a process. And I think anybody who really has spent time in the WNBA and has understood the makeup of this landscape, one, you have a lot of, you're really proud, of what the WNBA is and its existence, but we all can agree that CBA and a lot of the rules that have been in place have been extremely dated. And honestly, it's hard to even think back to what they were after seeing some of the details of the new agreement, because it's hard to believe that there were things like, us trying to negotiate things like maternity leave, and what does that mean? And can a player still be paid even if, they're on maternity leave? Like the fact that we're having these conversations and, 2020 now is just is crazy to me. But at the end of the day, just like Gabe said, you go through this list, and you can tell that, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, this committee, everybody who tried so hard to find a common ground on this, you can tell that it has been deeply thought out. They've really spent a lot of time working on this. And, like Gabe mentioned, the travel elements, we are completely delusional if we think that, the players in the WNBA are just going to automatically start flying privately. It's just not going to happen, so there has to be some parts of this that as fans and your common average everyday person understands are just not going to happen right now. It might happen, in a playoff like it did last year a little bit, or you might be able to have those types of experiences here and there. But being able to, bump up seat status from economy to, at a premium, to allow more leg room, to allow a little bit more accommodations for these players, individual hotel room accommodations for every player. We're potentially talking about situations where players are sharing hotel rooms. I don't know how often that was happening before, but it obviously was, just to guarantee that each player is going to have privacy and their own room to themselves. And I mean, that's just important. And the fact that we're even talking about that seems crazy. And then, I talked about the maternity leave element of this is a very, very important subject right now, this day and age. And a lot of these players, I know this was such a important topic for them. And so to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and really increase this, I think for me as a woman is one of the biggest wins that comes out of this. Free agency elements we talked about, but the pay and some of these things that are going to go into place obviously aren't going to be able to go into effect right away. It's not like all of a sudden we're sitting here and okay, everybody's going to make this now. So I think for me, I'm extremely excited. I think it's wonderful. You can tell that Commissioner Kathy Engelbart, everybody involved in this, really is committed at the expansion and the growth of the WNBA, which is what we all want. But now I think it's important as the conversation continues to celebrate it, but also I want to ask the questions of, well, how is this going to happen? And most importantly for me, why weren't we doing this before? Like, one, where's this money coming from? Where has it been? How are we generating this revenue? And why was it as low as it was from the beginning? And obviously we're going to have a ton of time to talk about that. A lot's going to be written on that. But at the end of the day, you asked my initial reaction, and I'm just thrilled for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, or whatever it is, but I'm excited, but I'm cautiously excited. The way I look at it from a very like negative, crotchety old man's point of view is, okay, so we know this was a negotiation between the players and the owners / the league. Who won? Because there's always a winner and there's always a loser. Obviously, both sides publicly are going to say that both sides won and that they found a great agreement. I just don't view it like that. Obviously, I think one person got a little bit better out of it. My initial reaction, seeing all the information, was the players got the better hand of it. They kind of called the league and the owners bluff of that you don't have the money to give us more money, or you don't have the ability to give us these added benefits, when clearly there is that ability to do it. So that's my first takeaway. Obviously, the key point is salary is much, much better. I mean, what Gabe was talking about earlier, the average salary is going to be higher than the highest paid player was getting for at any point in the W. So that is obviously a huge thing. A few concerns of mine are some of the better changes to free agency and contracts and such like that aren't going to kick in until, the 2021 or the 2022 or the 2022 season. A lot of twos there. I'm getting confused. But so, I mean, that's kind of my biggest concern is, okay, are we almost putting the carrot in front of the bunny, so the bunny will chase the carrot, or are we actually going to see that? Again, I'm just like a negative person when it comes to that type of stuff. But I do think there are some interesting aspects. Obviously, I don't know what they're calling it, but like the motherhood or the parental additions to the CBA are great. I think having a 2-bedroom apartment for the players with kids is amazing. Having a breastfeeding space is amazing. My only concern, and I hate to be that person to say it, but now that we're giving players with maternity leave full salary, how will that affect the salary cap? How is that going? I fully agree and think that they should be getting full salary, but I didn't see anybody talk about the topic of how that affects the salary cap and how that's going to affect the building of teams. And that's just something from a on-court salary cap GM hat that I'm concerned about. But I mean, that's my basic reaction. I'm very weary to jump on board and get all excited. Gabe, what are your main concerns of the current CBA?
Well, I think you brought up a good point with the maternity leave. To me, the biggest issue is that there's no minimum set. So, we had this problem with Skylar Diggins-Smith, that she felt that she was being rushed back to play and that she wasn't given as much time as she needs to. And I think someone asked on the conference call with Commissioner Engelbert is how long is maternity leave? And she said, as long as the player needs, which one hand is great because some people need more or less time than others. On the flip side, I'm concerned if there's not a minimum, teams are going to get antsy and teams are going to push people back to play when they're not ready or they don't want to. I think there is a question about the salary cap, but to me, that's much more easily handled in saying, if you're on maternity leave, you don't count towards the salary cap. I think that's easy. The season is expanding slightly. It's going from 34 games to 36 games. I'm not sure if that includes the new Commissioner Cup games. I think it will. So, it's not like we have this very long season that maternity leave could really affect if you're just not on the salary cap. So to me, the salary cap issue is less important as the fact that some teams may want to rush back players. The other thing I'm concerned about is what I mentioned at the beginning was that all of the nice things that they said about compensation and all of this is somewhat dependent on bonuses and marketing, and if you're participating in those things, and that's great. But someone asked the question on this conference call, if a player just wants to play basketball, say someone is just wants to play in the WNBA, are they going to miss out on $150,000 because they don't want to do the marketing things for the league? Which we would love to have every player want to be, front and center for the league and be an ambassador. That's not what every player wants. So I don't want, someone to make less money because they are not willing to do those sorts of things and they just want to play basketball. Another concern that I had is the travel. I don't think the travel problems were sufficiently addressed to me. I mean, obviously, it's like what Rachel said, like we're not going to just suddenly start flying charter planes all the time, especially when they're putting more resources to compensation and to childcare and to maternity leave and family planning. Those resources will naturally have to be taken away from travel, but it doesn't solve the problem of when you're flying commercial flights are going to get canceled. So when that happens, what is the fallback? I think I saw someone on Twitter. I don't remember who, but someone mentioned that teams can now pay for charter flights when it's necessary or when they need it. But I don't know if that's just for, players who may be going somewhere for another obligation and coming back in a week or whatever. So I'm concerned about that. I don't think the travel has been sufficiently addressed. And, I think free agency to me, the biggest problem was not the core designations really, it does kind of suck. But however, most big players like to stay on their current teams because they've built something there. That's why they've become great players there. So, my bigger concern was the reserving of younger players. So when you come into this league, in the first 3 years, you can only negotiate with the team that you are playing with. If they decide for whatever reason that they don't want to resign you, you cannot negotiate with a different team. So I'm very intrigued at what they will do with that system in the CBA. Remember, we don't have the full text yet, and this has not been approved by the WNBA Board of Governors. It has been approved by the Players Association, but it has not been approved by the Board of Governors. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that, because to me, that was a bigger problem. It seems like this CBA is geared toward making the best players have more money and giving them the notoriety that they really deserve. But I'm just concerned about what it's doing to the sort of bottom of this group of players and the rookies and, players coming from overseas. How is it going to affect them? And that's something that we don't know. And I think if that was something that was overwhelmingly positive, we would know. So those are my concerns. But however, it's what I wrote an article that will be out hopefully today or tomorrow, that this is much closer to the best case scenario than to the worst case scenario. And that's the big win for all of us, for the WNBA, for the players. And, we'll have to see how it all affects, how everything is affected, and also how long this agreement actually goes, because it was announced for 8 years. But is there an opt-out if things change, that this league starts to make more money? How will that affect it? So we have concerns, but overwhelmingly positive right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the big thing when it came to free agency that stuck out to me was them adjusting, like the prior agreement was basically free agency period, like you were talking about, but they have shifted it so it will be one less year of service. So basically, it used to be you had to have 5 or more years of service. I believe now it's going to be reduced. The other cool thing that I think is the reduction of numbers that you can receive the core designation. We obviously know that is going into effect with the beginning of the 2020 season. So that's interesting. That will affect current free agency, which is something I know we've talked about briefly on the pod. We've also talked about it in articles on the website. And that's something that I think is very key, that yes, we can know like, oh, this is an unrestricted free agent, this is a restricted free agent, but knowing the amount of core designation that each player has had definitely hardcore affects that ability. Something else that's interesting to me, that I'm curious to learn more about, is really trying to word this in a political sense. How is the league with this new CBA going to be more transparent when it comes to contracts and when it comes to the finer details of what's going on? Because anyone who follows the league knows there is an element of fog around certain things. Every time a WNBA contract is signed, heck, today, Katie Smith, as we originally reported, Winsidr, signed to the Minnesota Lynx to be an assistant coach there. Seems like through their presser, just a little tangent, that she will be the lead assistant, which seems to indicate that Shelly P will be going to New York. You should check out that podcast because we do blatantly ask Walt Hopkins whether or not she will be joining New York. So check that out to get a little bit more information on that. But point is, in that presser, you saw them say, per the terms of the team or the league or whatever it is, details on the contract have not been announced. And I would really like to see the league start shifting towards, okay, maybe we're not going to talk about the amount of money they're getting. Fine. Maybe we'll give it a range. Like, there has to be a good in-between where they can talk to us about the contracts being signed, without, divulging too much information that they find inappropriate. So I would like to see that. Rachel, talk to me. What are your big concerns?
I'm very curious to see how this is going to impact the players making decisions to go play overseas. This is a big deal in terms of not missing training camp and needing to be present with that. So how will this trickle down? That increase in salary trickle down to players making decisions to stay stateside or opt out of playing professionally overseas? I think, big picture wise, your hope is that you do have more women who are making the decision to stay here, get involved in coaching, further increase other aspects of their career instead of running their bodies down playing year round, and kind of that mental and physical toll that we have seen for so long. They literally go straight from Russia, Turkey, wherever it may be, straight into the beginning of the WNBA season. And once that's done, they're going straight back over. So that has been a grueling aspect of professional women's basketball for a long time. And that's a huge part of the women's basketball culture. So for me, I am very curious to see how this really impacts overseas play, how this impacts the top clubs over there, and their incentive to do they combat that and try and pay more. This is going to have a big trickling down effect when it comes to just overseas and, players deciding to take a season off from being in Europe. So that for me is my biggest question mark. I know it's very hard to go over there and spend, 5, 6, 7 months away from your families in a completely different culture. But that is how they have made the bulk of their salaries for so long. So that for me is a big question mark. That's something that I think is going to be very interesting as we see this kind of go into effect the next few years.
Yeah, so I just want to respond to that. So what Rachel's saying is 100% true, but in the conference call, Commissioner Engelbert did bring up that they're going to have, they're going to taper that process of having to come back. And of having to come back to training camp if you're a younger player. So I think that is meant to help both European players and rookies who are making less money, and just the younger players who are all making less money, in order to help ameliorate the effects of that and allow them to play overseas if they would like. And certainly for the European players, allow them to stay home, because I think that's a very big deal for them. So I just wanted to clarify that they do have that in mind. But it is a huge question as to what's going to happen to overseas basketball.
Sorry, I had my
there.
mic
He
off.
is.
No, I completely agree. I think initially it definitely comes off as a shot across the bow towards overseas basketball. But there is an element of, after you kind of read up on it more and you hear the interview with Kathy and you kind of go, okay, I get it. It's not as aggressive as we think, but there is an element of almost that overseas basketball has had the ability and the power to not necessarily strong arm the W, but kind of dictate a lot more of what goes on in the world of women's basketball. And this is kind of a statement from the league, at least in my opinion, to say, we know that we are the best league for women's basketball in the world. And we know that, yes, there's many elements and things that go on overseas that maybe we're not at the level of being able to pay our players that, or whatever it may be. But we're saying that we're putting our foot down and we're going to get back into the game of dictating how this works for the whole league. Rachel or Gabe, any final thoughts about the CBA?
Yeah. Yeah, I got final thoughts. We're good. I mean, this is we're at the starting line now, and I think, like we mentioned, we have our concerns, we have the things that we're worried about, but at the same time, like we are now at the starting line for this new CBA, for this new era of women's basketball, and we are ready to take off. Hopefully, this free agent period is going to be crazy, and we'll have a ton of stuff to talk about, and we'll be doing a lot more of these emergency podcasts. But it's just it's a great day for the fans, the league, the players, and hopefully we'll as we get more details, we'll be able to delve more into our concerns and see if those have been addressed in new CBA. But man, just like what a day! We woke up not knowing. We were all in our group chat last few days wondering when this was going to happen, speculating when it's going to happen, when it's going to be announced, what do we know, and to just have it come out so almost suddenly is great, and so I'm very happy for the league, proud of being a part of this league, and really just want to shout out to all the people who did a lot of hard work to get us to this point where we have a new CBA that the players and the league can be proud of. And we're not just talking about how little Sue Bird's making it anymore. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk a lot more about what Sue Bird is doing on the court and what she's doing off the court in a more positive way.
Yeah, I mean, Gabe, that was fantastic. Everything you said. I think, we spend so much time complaining or challenging or asking questions. And I think a lot of people do that in an effort for growth. And a lot of people do that because they want to see growth. They want to see better for the WNBA. They want to see better for women. And I think before we start kind of not criticizing, but, diving into it so much and really understanding, this is not going to be foolproof. This is not going to be a perfect scenario for everybody involved, but this is a huge step. This is a new era. This is a new time frame where we can celebrate further growth in a league that has had as much criticism and has had to fight and scrap and claw for every single thing that it has got. From the beginning of this league in 1997 to where we are today, this is a monumental day. This is monumental growth. It continues just to kind of show that the projection of this league and the equality for women and the fight for women, is worthwhile, and we're getting somewhere. So I think for me, I know that we have a lot of time to kind of pick apart the good, the negative, the side effects, things that maybe we haven't even been able to talk about, but there's time for that. Today, I just want to celebrate, this is a big day. We're talking about something so positive. We're talking about growth. We're talking about something that the players are very proud of, you can tell, and they're very excited about. And I just want to echo that as well, because again, we spend so much time being negative and really criticizing things. I want to spend some time being so positive about it. So I'm happy. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the long-term effects of this and the long-term growth. And I think we've got the right pieces and right leadership in place to make sure all that takes place.
No, I agree. And that's it's an exciting time for the W, and I'm excited to see what the next steps are and to see everyone's reaction, kind of more deep dives into it. And obviously we're going to see a lot more, not exposés, but articles explaining and breaking down all the ins and outs of it. And I encourage that. I welcome it, and I'm excited for it. As we always say, we believe the players of the W and its community deserve the same in-depth analysis and respect that men's sports receive on a daily basis. Please consider joining our Patreon community to help support us in the hard work that we do.